In this video, we share 3 disturbing Home Alone horror stories that will leave you unsettled. Stay with us for these chilling true events. You'll never feel safe alone again. It was a sweltering summer evening in August 2009, and the heat had made the city of Toronto feel utterly exhausted. I was home alone because my parents had gone out for their weekly date night. This was a usual routine for them. They would go out for dinner and watch a movie once a week. Often they would indulge in a glass of wine or two and fall asleep in the theater, leading to nights where they'd say, "I might have overdone it a bit," then fell asleep during the movie. That afternoon, I decided to go for a run around the neighborhood. The heat was intense. The sun blazed in the sky like a fiery orb, and even the air felt scorching. When I returned home from my run, I was drenched in sweat, my body completely soaked. It felt like water was oozing from every pore. Our house was quite old and there was no air conditioning. The entire place felt stifling in the heat. To cool off, I first took a cold shower. As I showered, I thought that since I would be home alone all night, I should create a comfortable atmosphere. I decided to open some windows to allow air circulation and cool the house down. I opened a window in the kitchen, then opened 2 more in the living room. My plan was to relax in the basement while watching a movie since it usually stayed cooler, so I opened the basement window as well. After my shower, I felt more at ease. I went to the kitchen, prepared dinner, and then headed down to the basement. I started watching a new show on Netflix. With the cool atmosphere, good food, and cozy surroundings, the night seemed like it would be quite enjoyable. However, at some point I realized I had fallen asleep without even noticing after finishing my meal. When I suddenly woke up, I found the entire room shrouded in darkness. The only light came from the faint glow of the TV screen, reflecting dimly off the walls. The basement, which had once been cool and inviting, had turned so frigid that I began to shiver. I realized the basement window had been left open for too long, and the cold air had chilled the entire room. I got up to close the window, then turned off the TV and headed upstairs with the dishes. As I started to climb the stairs, I noticed that the whole house was enveloped in darkness. After putting the dishes in the dishwasher and preparing to close the kitchen window, I suddenly remembered that the living room windows were still open. I decided to go into the living room to shut them. I first closed the window next to the TV, then I moved toward the second window, which was near the front porch. That's when I noticed something strange. My mother's favorite flower vase, usually sitting on a small table by the window, had fallen to the floor. The artificial flowers inside were scattered across the floor. I didn't think much of it at first. I assumed the open window had caused the curtains to flutter and knock it over. However, as I closed the window and began picking up the flowers, I suddenly heard a peculiar sound. It was very faint, almost inaudible, like someone was gently twisting a door handle. Along with it, I heard a soft noise that I thought was someone's footsteps on the floor above. My heart raced in my chest. I froze. Gathering my courage, I slowly stood up, my heartbeat quickening. I didn't know what to do. I took a few cautious steps toward the stairs, and then I heard the footsteps again, this time clearer. Something was definitely up there. I felt nearly certain of it. The ground beneath me felt unstable, but summoning all my courage, I slowly made my way to the stairs. As I reached the bottom, I placed my hand on the railing and looked up. Darkness surrounded me. I couldn't decide whether to go up the stairs or to step outside and seek help. I quickly dashed back to the kitchen and texted my dad, keeping my phone on silent to avoid any noise. He replied, "The house is old. On hot days, the wooden floors and doors can creak." I insisted that I had distinctly heard the sound of a door handle being twisted. He reassured me that it was probably just the wind causing a door to shift if a window was open upstairs. Feeling slightly reassured by my dad's words, my anxiety lessened a bit, but the discomfort still lingered. I grabbed a glass of water and slowly made my way back to the stairs. As I stepped onto the stairs, I noticed all the doors were open except for mine, which was slightly ajar. The door was gently swaying in the breeze. I thought maybe my mom had left the windows open to let in some cool air. I felt a small sense of relief. It seemed my dad was right. I turned on the lights in my room and quickly checked everything before I lay down in bed. I felt a bit more comfortable, but that nagging unease still lingered in my chest. I then started watching Seinfeld on my laptop, but suddenly I heard that eerie sound again. It sounded as if someone was rubbing against the door of my wardrobe. I quickly turned on the lamp next to me. The wardrobe door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had closed it when I came in. A chilling sensation ran down my spine. Then, I heard a horrifying, bone-chilling laugh. It was unlike anything I had ever heard before. No horror movie could ever replicate such a sound. As I set my laptop aside, the wardrobe door suddenly swung wide open. A figure stood inside, its body obscured by my clothes. At first, I couldn't see it clearly, but when the wardrobe door fully opened, my breath caught in my throat. A tall, strange figure stood before me, its body shrouded in darkness, as if it were not a living person at all. I looked into its eyes, so empty and deep, it felt like I was being swallowed by that darkness. My body froze as if all my nerves had shut down. I couldn't even breathe. The figure slowly began to advance toward me, making no sound, as if it floated through the air rather than walking on the ground. In that moment, I felt certain this might be the final moment of my life. Summoning whatever courage I could, I tried to turn and run, but that eerie, bone-chilling laugh echoed again. This time, it was even more terrifying, as if the laugh was igniting every cell in my body with fear. I dashed toward the door, but before I could open it, the figure stood right in front of me. It leaned down close to my face, its cold breath brushing against my mouth. I froze in terror, experiencing a fear I had never known before. It whispered softly in my ear, "This room was mine, and it will be again starting tonight." My body couldn't take it anymore. Suddenly, I collapsed onto the floor, darkness enveloping me. The next morning, I woke up in bed. I was astonished to find that I was in my own room, and everything seemed normal. The events of the previous night felt dreamlike. The wardrobe door was closed, and all the windows were shut. However, my head throbbed as if someone had been hitting it all night. Feeling a bit scared and confused, I stepped out of my room, but I couldn't make sense of anything. I went downstairs to find my parents had returned and were busy with their usual routines. I didn't mention anything to them. I knew they would dismiss it as just a dream. But I knew what had happened wasn't a dream. The laughter of that mysterious figure and its final words echoed in my mind. "This room was mine, and it will be again starting tonight." Since then, every time I've tried to be alone in that room, that chilling feeling returns. To this day, I still don't know who that figure was or what it wanted, but I know it's still there, always watching me. When I was 25 years old, I worked the closing shift at a local grocery store in Vancouver. My shift typically started around 10 p.m. and wrapped up just past midnight. After a long, exhausting night of stocking shelves, I finally made it home, feeling a mix of fatigue and relief at having completed another day. I shared a modest apartment with my roommate, Ryan, in a less than desirable neighborhood. Despite the area's reputation, I felt fortunate to have my own space, especially after moving out of my parents' house. As I stepped inside, I tossed my jacket on the coat rack by the front door and headed into the kitchen, craving a late-night snack. I pulled a frozen burrito from the freezer, but as I turned to head back, I noticed something odd. My bedroom door was slightly ajar. At first, it didn't seem too alarming, but I distinctly remembered closing that door before I left for work that morning. I valued my privacy, and I always made it a point to shut my door whenever I left the apartment. A creeping sense of unease washed over me. I took a step back into the living room, peering down the dark hallway. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing against the silence. Nothing but stillness met my ears. Trying to shake off the feeling of dread, I walked to the hallway light switch and flipped it on, flooding the space with light. "Ryan, is that you?" I asked, half hoping he was just trying to pull one of his usual pranks on me. As I approached my bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated my room, revealing everything in its usual place: my twin bed, my nightstand, and the clutter I had left behind. I took a deep breath, feeling a small sense of relief, and closed the door firmly before heading back to the kitchen. I placed my burrito in the microwave and switched on the television, ready to zone out with a horror movie. But then, a muffled thump echoed from down the hall. At first, I attributed it to the neighbors, as they could be pretty loud and disruptive. However, when the noise occurred again, it was more pronounced, and I could tell for certain it was coming from inside my apartment. "Ryan!" I called again, but my voice trembled slightly this time. Just then, the microwave beeped loudly, making my heart race. "Yeah, sorry. I dropped something," Ryan replied from the hallway. Relief flooded over me at the realization that he was home. I returned to the kitchen to retrieve my food, and just as I was about to take it out, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text from Ryan. "Hey dude, running a little late at work. Can you leave the door unlocked for me?" A chill crept down my spine, and my stomach dropped. I quickly typed back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He replied almost instantly, "Yeah, why?" Panic surged through me as I heard another noise from the hallway, and when I looked up, my blood ran cold. A large silhouette stood there, holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. Instinct kicked in. I turned and bolted toward the front door, the heavy sound of the man's boots echoing behind me. He wasn't running. Instead, he was strolling leisurely, savoring the chase. I didn't dare look back. I dashed down the emergency staircase and burst out into the parking lot, my heart racing as I called the police. The officers arrived within minutes, quickly entering my apartment to investigate. While I stood outside, pacing with anxiety, they searched every corner. But what they found still haunts me to this day. As they combed through the kitchen, they discovered a note hidden under a salt shaker on the table. It contained just one chilling word: think. This simple yet sinister message left me rattled, prompting a flood of questions. Who had invaded my space? What were their intentions? And why had they left such a cryptic note behind? In the aftermath of that terrifying night, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. I was left questioning everything: my sense of security, my choices, and the very nature of safety in a world where danger could lurk just around the corner. That experience taught me that sometimes the most frightening aspects of life are not what we see, but the shadows we cannot escape. A few years ago, when I was 15 years old, I was a sophomore student living in a quiet, rural area of Ontario. My family had gone out, leaving me alone at home. Our house was situated on the edge of a dense forest, surrounded by sprawling fields, with very few neighbors nearby. To my left lived an elderly couple who often had family visiting. To my right was a middle-aged couple who worked night shifts. Across the street lived another nice couple, whose sweet little girl occasionally came over to play with me and my younger brother. That evening, my parents went out for a while, and my brother was staying overnight at a friend's house. I decided to enjoy some time alone. Outside, it had begun to snow, and I was watching television. For dinner, I had made rice and chicken, and my evening was completely normal. When the clock struck 11 p.m., I was deeply engrossed in an exciting game of Halo. Suddenly, I felt an unsettling sensation that something was off. I tried to dismiss it, thinking it was just a typical feeling of unease that sometimes comes with being alone. But at that moment, I heard an odd sound, a soft whisper, as if someone was calling me. Panic washed over me. The sound was clearly coming from the window. I quickly turned around and lifted the blinds, but I saw nothing. The outside was peaceful, blanketed in snow. I remembered the local legends, stories about strange occurrences in the woods. I recalled how a woman had once gone missing in this area. Her spirit said to still roam these woods. That thought intensified my fear. Just then, I heard that eerie sound again, clearer now, as if someone was saying, "Come to me." To ease my anxiety, I rushed to the office, trying to distract myself with a game. But about 30 minutes later, I heard another noise. This time I was certain it wasn't a natural occurrence, it felt deliberate. I bolted to the kitchen, grabbing a flashlight and a large knife for protection and investigation. I shone the flashlight towards the porch but saw nothing. However, I noticed some footprints in the thin layer of snow leading from the window. Those prints seemed to have an unsettling energy trailing behind them. My mind raced with questions. Who was it, and why were they here? What did they want? I called my mother, hoping to find some reassurance. She instructed me, "Lock the doors. If anything happens again, call the police. Stay safe." She was an hour away, and I didn't want to ruin their night out, so I declined their offer to come home. I quickly locked all the doors and windows, returning to my room. I tried listening to music to calm myself, but that overwhelming fear clung to me. Just then, I heard another sound, a flash of light. The room suddenly went dark. I realized this wasn't just a power outage. Something unusual was happening. I turned off the flashlight and scanned the room, and suddenly, I saw a shadow. The shadow moved towards the window. In sheer terror, I reached for my phone to call my mom. My heart raced. Around 3 a.m., my parents returned home. We went outside, my father armed with a handgun, prepared for anything ominous. We searched the perimeter of the house but found nothing. However, we noticed unusual footprints circling the windows and around the door. Then my father discovered something horrifying. The door had been battered, as if struck by a heavy object. The next morning, my father followed the footprints and found an abandoned graveyard nearby. Towering trees loomed over it, making the entire area feel eerie and foreboding. Strangely, there were no signs of recent human activity. The terror and anxiety from that night lingered in our minds long after. I realized that something unknown had been watching me in the dark. That night, I became certain I would never be able to spend another night alone again. The memory of that evening still resides in my mind like a shadow, where my sense of security vanished, leaving me with the knowledge that whatever was lurking out there might still be watching me.